Good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News. Hope everyone had a nice holiday weekend. Hope you had a safe return from the holiday. I've had some unexpected roadblocks thrown up in my way. I told everyone the other day I nearly broke my leg. My knee is healing. However, it's far from being perfect. Need to go to the doctor later on today, perhaps tomorrow morning. And on the way home, I think that I destroyed my manual transmission on my car. Unfortunately, the shop can't get it in any earlier than Thursday, and I have no idea how long it's going to take to fix from there. So it looks like I am homebound for the time being. At least I am in a position where I can get it fixed. That's a blessing. But we have many updates here for you related to the Jeffrey Epstein indictments. They have been unsealed. He appeared in court today. There were some interesting things found in his apartment, and several of the victims spoke after the press conference. We also have video from the press conference from the SDNY. Also, some new developments from, of course, Judicial Watch. They're one of the only groups in the nation doing work as it relates to the former administration and the Secretary of State, HRC, in that former administration, related to her emails and the terrible goings-on there. And then finally, we have a cool little thing from Tucker when he visited the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. You guys are going to love it. So sit back, relax, and we'll be right back with all that news after a quick word from my sponsor. A unanimous act of Congress has sparked a $270 billion windfall across America. Have you guys requested your $1,818 check yet? Well, a new law from Congress has created this windfall. It's a lot like Social Security, but you don't have to be retired. And you can grab up to 24 of these a year. It's all part of a brand new income program, and it's explained in detail in a video at www.superpowerchecks.com. All you gotta do is sign up for the distribution list, and they show up in your mail without lifting a finger. Thousands of Americans are celebrating these paydays, and now you can too. Just go to www.superpowerchecks.com, watch the educational video. It's completely free. Remember, the information is free, and by supporting my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, and here you have it. Jeffrey Epstein indictment unsealed, accused of exploitation of dozens of young girls, some as young as 14. It's just as bad as we thought. Prosecutors unsealed an indictment against billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein on Monday. The court accuses Epstein of abusing dozens of young girls for years at one of the biggest mansions in Manhattan, paying them hundreds of dollars in cash for each encounter and hundreds more if they could recruit other victims. As Zero Hedge noted, this is separate from last week's order by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals that documents in a defamation lawsuit against Epstein that it be made public, which may contain the names of high-level individuals. Bloomberg also reported that a 2-count indictment describing sex acts with girls as young as 14 was unsealed early Monday in federal court in Manhattan, just hours after federal agents used a crowbar to enter Epstein's townhome. The charges of trafficking and conspiracy carry a minimum of 10 years in prison if he's convicted. He is expected to make an appearance later on Monday and seek to be released on bail. Now, Mike Cernovich posted this regarding the indictment. He shows the actual indictment itself right here, U.S. versus Jeffrey Epstein indictment. We're going to take a look at some pages from that in just a moment. And then Derek Waller says, between 2002 and 2005, Epstein enticed and recruited minor girls to visit his Manhattan mansion and his Palm Beach estate. Jeffrey Epstein indictment unsealed moments ago. The Manhattan billionaire faces 2 counts of trafficking. Indictment says he sexually exploited and abused dozens of minor girls in his Manhattan home. Epstein would recruit young girls for a massage to be performed nude or partially nude, then turning sexual. He'd pay hundreds of dollars upon completion and would have girls find others to do the same, basically having them become recruiters for him. The indictment accused 2 employees in Palm Beach of scheduling his sexual encounters, and apparently they would be the ones often to pay the girls. Now, it looks like the video itself that was embedded here in the article has has been removed, but we do have some clips here from my good friend Methods. Let's go ahead and take a look at this thread of Methods from the press conference. All right, here are some of the documents included in the indictment. It says that, of course, that Epstein was abusing dozens of underage girls, enticing them into his home to engage in acts in exchange for money. And he worked with several employees to ensure that he had a steady supply of minor victims to abuse. Right here, this is the actual press release from the SDNY detailing the charges against Epstein. And it also includes an area where you can call a number if you think that you're a victim of someone such as Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, 66, is charged with 1 count of sex trafficking of minors, which carries a maximum sentence of 40 years in prison, and 1 count of conspiracy to engage in acts of trafficking with minors, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. The statutory maximum and mandatory penalties are described by Congress and are provided here for informational purposes only, as any sentencing of the defendant would be determined by the judge. So let's go ahead and take a look at this next tweet in the thread. This actually is video from the event put on by the SDNY this morning.
Announce the unsealing of sex trafficking charges against Jeffrey Epstein. The charges allege that Epstein sexually abused young girls by enticing them to engage in sex acts for money. Epstein was arrested this past Saturday evening at Teterboro Airport aboard his private jet that had just landed from Paris, France. Epstein was taken to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, and later today he will be presented before Magistrate Judge Pittman and later a conference before District Court Judge Berman. The United States Attorney's Office will take the position at that presentment and that conference that Epstein should be detained pending trial. Epstein is charged in a 2-count indictment. First, conspiracy to commit sex trafficking, and second, the substantive crime of sex trafficking of underage girls. Beginning in at least 2002 and continuing until 2005, Epstein is alleged to have abused dozens of victims by causing them to engage in sex acts with him at his mansion in New York and at his estate in Palm Beach, Florida. The victims, all underage girls at the time of the alleged conduct, were given hundreds of dollars in cash after each encounter, either by Epstein or by one of Epstein's employees. The underage girls were initially recruited to provide Epstein with massages and often did so nude or partially nude. These massages became increasingly sexual in nature and would typically include 1 or more sex acts as specified in the indictment. As alleged, Epstein also paid certain victims to recruit additional girls to be similarly abused. This allowed Epstein to create an ever-expanding web of new victims. This conduct, as alleged, went on for years, and it involved dozens of young girls, some as young as 14 years old at the time that they were allegedly abused.
I'm so happy that the Justice Department is taking action against Epstein, albeit at this late date. What's really frightening is that all of these charges that were just read by Jeffrey Berman were detailed in the book Filthy Rich, which was basically a summation of the previous case against Jeffrey Epstein. All of these things were known before, and he still got off with the slap on the wrist that he received. And I'd also like to mention that that was under the former administration. That was also under the purview of Robert Mueller, the head of the FBI at that time, and the Justice Department, which was, of course, appointed by our former president, B.O. Barry Obama. All right, next, we have a little clip from the press conference. It includes a couple of reporters discussing what their thoughts are about what happened. And you can hear them say, man, all the QAnon people are going to be freaking out. This means that, yes, they know.
Man, all the QAnon people are going to be freaking out over this one.
Man, all the QAnon people are going to be freaking out. We're not freaking out. I think that we feel, grateful, hopeful for the future, perhaps vindicated, knowing that this is just the first rung in the ladder. Well, second, if you want to count Nexium. I think that this is a slow progression. There's going to be more to come. And this is going to lead to other arrests. But let's first take a look at what Jeffrey Epstein had to say in his defense earlier. Well, not surprisingly, he has pled not guilty to trafficking of underage girls. Disgraced billionaire Jeffrey Epstein has pled not guilty to charges that he was trafficking underage girls for crimes against children. During the hearing, prosecutors revealed that more alleged victims have come forward since his arrest. The 66-year-old owner of the Lolita Express airplane will remain in jail until a bail hearing on Thursday. Epstein is accused of creating and maintaining a network of dozens of underage girls that he exploited from 2002 to 2005. Prosecutors said that federal agents found nude photographs of what appeared to be underage girls in a safe in his Manhattan mansion. Other bizarre findings from the federal search warrant included a fully equipped dental chair in one of his bathrooms, complete with drills and other tools. And here in a tweet from Stefan Molyneux, we can actually see that bathroom with that dental chair and the tools. Now, was that for him and his private dental work, or was this some type of torture chair? Or perhaps a place where he could drill out teeth and then insert tracking devices for girls that he thought that he owned. The unsealed indictment against him accuses Epstein of sexually abusing dozens of young girls and paying them hundreds of dollars in cash for each encounter, and then, of course, using them to recruit additional victims. Prosecutors say that he is a registered sex offender and a flight risk, so they are asking that he be held on remand until his trial. They noted that he has 3 active passports and has regularly traveled in and out of the country on his private jet. Now, I mentioned the earlier case against Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go ahead and take a look at a clip which details the reason why this is all happening now. All right. Also, this clip right here from our friend and fellow researcher Methods includes a clip from Fox News when the several legal experts were on talking about what's going on here. And basically what happened in the last trial is that Epstein signed a non-prosecution agreement with the feds, and that non-prosecution was related to his co-conspirators. However, that was illegal. So now the federal government, the DOJ, is able to file these new charges against him. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
How serious are these charges against Epstein, David?
Oh, huge. I mean, he's exposed to life on these sex trafficking cases. Now, let's just talk how this came about, because back about a decade ago, he resolved his cases in Florida on state crimes, and he signed a non-prosecution agreement with the feds. Now, just this year, that non-prosecution agreement was found to be violating federal law, which opens the door to these new charges. And because sex trafficking doesn't have a statute of limitations, New York has now brought these charges against him, and he's exposed to life in prison.
As a former assistant U.S. attorney, Alex, are you convinced the feds must have the goods on Epstein?
Well, look, the Southern District of New York is a very, very capable office. They're, well known as some of the best prosecutors in the country, so they clearly have what they believe is a strong case. There are a lot of complications in this case. It took place a long time ago, the conduct at issue, and there is this deal hanging out there that the now Labor Secretary Acosta signed when he was the U.S. attorney down in Miami, which could absolutely lead to some complications down the road. And his defense team, Epstein's going to, he's a billionaire. He's going to have a huge defense team. They're going to fight this every step of the way.
Pretty serious lawyer on the other side, too, and David Boies, right? What are next steps in this case, David?
Yeah, he's going to be arraigned. He's going to go before a magistrate, and the judge is going to determine whether or not he'll be released with conditions. Thereafter, the prosecutor will have to provide discovery, and Epstein and his team is going to have to make the decision whether or not to plead guilty, whether or not to go to trial. And I think the most interesting thing that pops to me is Epstein going to cooperate? Because back in the day when he signed that non-prosecution agreement, it also protected co-conspirators. So if he's looking at life in prison, now may be the time to roll over on people, and who knows what type of people may be involved in this conspiracy.
Now that that non-prosecution agreement has been invalidated, this man right here is looking at life in prison. 40 years on this first charge, but this is not the end. This is but the beginning of course, they are going to do everything in their power at the Department of Justice to throw the book at Jeffrey Epstein, because his prosecution, his arrest, leads to many, many doors. And we're going to talk about that one next. So a former FBI official was speaking about this right here, and the indictment of Jeffrey Epstein is but a placeholder. We expect dozens of more charges in the future. Now, this FBI assistant, this former FBI assistant director, went on to discuss why the Public Corruption Unit is handling the Jeffrey Epstein prosecution. Look at this, guys. The Public Corruption Unit. Federal prosecutors announced sex trafficking and conspiracy charges against billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein. Insight from Chris Swecker, former head of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division, is given here. He said on Monday that the federal indictment of Jeffrey Epstein is a placeholder for prosecutors, and he expects a much larger superseding indictment to be forthcoming. An indictment alleging trafficking and trafficking conspiracy was unsealed Monday morning against the financier and registered sex offender. Prosecutors allege that Epstein, the 66-year-old wealthy hedge fund manager arrested on Saturday, preyed on dozens of victims as young as 14, allegedly operating a vast network from 2002 up to and including at least 2005. Now, we know that it went beyond that, but 2002 to 2005 is the period in which the original case was covering. He pled not guilty to the charges in a New York courtroom Monday afternoon. Former Assistant FBI Director Chris Swecker said he believes the two-count indictment was brought to get Epstein off the street as fast as possible. I think the decision was made that this conduct was ongoing, perhaps, he said, definitely ongoing. Now, Epstein, who once counted as friends former President Bill Clinton, Britain's Prince Andrew, and President Trump, albeit only briefly, and I will go into a story about that in a moment, was arrested Saturday after his private jet touched down from France. Court documents obtained by Fox News in 2016 showed that Clinton took at least 26 trips flying aboard Epstein's private jet known as the Lolita Express, and apparently ditched his Secret Service detail on some of those excursions. Records show President Trump apparently flew on the jet at least once. However, his legal team more recently has denied the two were friends. Swecker said on America's Newsroom that he believes the current investigation is a redo of a previous probe that ended with Epstein receiving the deal of the century. Epstein's plea deal, in which he was sentenced to 13 months in jail, was overseen by former Miami U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, who is now Trump's labor secretary. That plea deal never should have happened. This is a zero-tolerance crime, and now it should have been a zero-tolerance crime back then as well. He emphasized that the Southern District of New York's Public Corruption Unit is handling the Epstein case, probably because he is alleged to have provided underage women to pretty high-profile individuals. That would involve, by definition, public corruption if the charges were suppressed for that reason, said Swecker. The once secret deal, exposed in a series of reports in the Miami Herald, has been challenged in federal court. A judge ruled earlier this year that Epstein's victims should have been consulted under federal law, and he is now weighing whether to invalidate the agreement. So, this is wonderful news, you guys. It could not get any better than this. We know that Jeffrey Epstein had many high-profile clients and associates that he used to provide this service to. This disgusting service. But more than that, Jeffrey Epstein is looking at many new charges. I would imagine that when they busted into his Manhattan townhome today, they probably found a lot of different things that will allow them to charge him with additional charges. But even beyond that, I think that they are making the case on a lot of other pieces of evidence that they just have yet to present in the courtroom because the charges are not there or they have not been yet unsealed. So in regard to the idea, the fairy tale that Trump and Epstein were friends, I've said this many times before. President Trump existed his whole life among these swamp creatures, yet he never became one of them. He always was with them because that is the type of person that lives at these echelons. Money and power does something to people, and maybe more than that, the bad people will recruit other people that they can control and by which they can blackmail and then use to complete the system, continue it, and keep it going, keep running on that hamster wheel. Now, if you think back, President Trump has rarely said negative things about people in interviews or when asked about them. President Trump famously said that Jeffrey Epstein was a nice guy, But he did say that he likes young girls. Now, I always thought that that was a covert dig at Jeffrey Epstein. He says he's a nice guy, but then he says he likes young girls. That connotates something pretty gross in my mind. Now, he also famously said after the election that the Clintons were basically nice people and that he didn't want to go after them. A lot of people freaked out about that. I said then, and I will say now, I think that he knows that if he was to just come out and say, blah, 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 I'm taking you down, you better be ready, evidence would begin to be destroyed. People would start going on the defensive, and they would do whatever they could to make sure that wouldn't happen. Now, knowing that he said that, they still went after him. They still did whatever they could to make sure that they could remove President Trump and they could, commit this soft coup, or even a hard coup if you think about it. But with regard to the time that President Trump flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane, Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump, they were both wealthy men. Epstein lived in Florida. President Trump lived in Florida. He had Mar-a-Lago there. Many wealthy people would come to Mar-a-Lago and hang out. Well, Jeffrey Epstein came to Mar-a-Lago and hung out. The first story that I heard was that President Trump caught Jeffrey Epstein trying to ensnare a young female daughter of a friend of his, and he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago after that. I heard another story earlier today that the one time President Trump did fly on the Lolita Express, he was taken to the island. Only once he arrived there did he really begin to understand exactly what was going on, and he was so disgusted, he was so dismayed that he kept to himself. He did not participate in any of the events taking place there, and as soon as he was able, he caught another plane straight off the island, and it was at that point that he barred Jeffrey Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. Now, which one is true? Perhaps one was, the public reason that was given so that President Trump didn't have to talk about the fact that he had been tricked into going to Epstein's island. I don't know, but I think either way, President Trump learned exactly who and what Epstein was, and it was at that point that he cut all public social ties with him and any private if it existed. I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein and President Trump were ever truly friends. I think that, again, President Trump played the game so that he could get to where he is now and do that without having any attempts on his life. We know that there have been many attempts on President Trump's life since he started running for president and then since he has become president. If President Trump had been out there all these years saying that he wanted to take these people down, that he wanted to bring justice to these people who had been harming America, then he would never have made it this far. I saw an excellent video from Where We Go One, We Go All on YouTube earlier today. It's called The Second American Revolution, and he details his awakening to President Trump and many of the other things that we were talking about today. He's from New York. He's got a great story. Many, many good videos on his channel. I'd recommend that everybody go watch him. And I'm trying to work right now on getting him on the show so that we can have him on a live stream and we can talk about some of those videos. But definitely check that video out, because that is where I heard the story about President Trump actually going to the island. I would suggest that if anybody has any qualms about President Trump and wants to believe that he is friends with Jeffrey Epstein, just look at what's happened. Jeffrey Epstein is being tried, and he will be prosecuted for these crimes. Jeffrey Epstein will bring in other names. These people are going to pay for what they've been doing. We have perfectly watched this plan play out over the last 2 years or more. We have seen many, many arrests of people committing crimes against children. Then we saw the first high-profile case with Keith Rainier. Now we are going to see this next high-profile case with Jeffrey Epstein. After that, I am certain we'll follow the case against David Miscavige and the people surrounding him. Continue to watch. It is happening, folks. This is where it all begins. Now, with regard to the things that were discovered when Jeffrey Epstein's apartment was broken into, someone here, this is sent to me by Methods, but this man's name is Ryan Grimm. It says CDs in Epstein's safe. They were labeled young, name, plus name. That looks an awful lot like they found the blackmail tapes. Like I said earlier, this is what these people do. They put others in compromising positions where they can blackmail them, and then they can get them to do whatever they want. Either these people are willing participants in this sick behavior, or they are tricked into participating in it, and then they learn what they've done, or maybe they think they've done something, and then they are blackmailed. This is very similar to the story that Dave Chappelle told when he returned and did that comedy special on Netflix. He insinuated that there were people who would make you think that you had done something horrible, like, say, accidentally killing someone, and then they go about telling you that they are cleaning up the mess, and then now, because they've done this for you, they essentially own you. This is the kind of thing that Jeffrey did. He did the blackmail operation for, I would think, the intelligence service of an ally of the United States, I'm going to say, and then also for an intelligence service within the United States. And I think that it goes even further beyond that. I think that Jeffrey Epstein also was doing this for his own enrichment and to ensure that people around him would help him to funnel women to him, children to him, to satisfy his own sick desires. Now, in a post from Infinite Chan, also sent over by my good friend Methods, he says, I think an Anon just nailed it. And this is a really, really great summation. He says, this is how you know Epstein is an important marker. Normies and red-pilled alike will be drawn into this story, either because of, starts with a P, ends with an A gate, or because of Orange Man bad. Left and right outlets will report on this, either to nail Clinton and Epstein or to nail POTUS. Celebrity entanglement ensures even the normiest of gossip outlets will have to touch this. The whole world is watching. This is the story that draws the normies into those crimes against children at Italian restaurants. This is the story that will be watched by all sides of the fractured populace. This is the story that baits the anti-Trump crowd into red-pilling themselves. POTUS involvement is a 4D trap. Those who tune in to see Trump get ripped up will wind up watching the swamp destroyed. Trump marched into the rat's nest and called in a tactical nuke on his own position. This is what's happening. This is it, guys. This is the pill to end all pills, and everyone in America is going to be swallowing it because the news outlets will not be able to ignore this one. Now, also from Methods, and I just want to give him a huge plug. Thank you so much, brother. You put together so much great information. It really, really helps me out, and you help out everyone who follows you. But there were several accusers of Jeffrey Epstein who were able to speak after the press conference by the SDNY. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what they had to say.
Thank you, David. Yes, this is a great day for victims, and I'm humbled and inspired by their voices, and I am gratified to get to read a statement on behalf of, first, Virginia Giuffre, and second, Sarah Ransom, both of whom are victims and clients. So this is Virginia's statement. After years and years of trying my best to shine light in the dark place of sex crimes that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and their circle of powerful people committed against me and girls just like me, finding the words adequate enough now to express how I feel is a tall task. But I can say without hesitation that I am deeply pleased that the federal prosecutors in New York have arrested Jeffrey Epstein, and our case is taken in a serious way. It is time for Jeffrey Epstein and those who participated in these sex crimes to be brought to justice. And this statement is from Sarah Ransom, another victim. The news of my abuser's arrest today is a step in the right direction to finally hold Epstein accountable for his crimes and restore my faith that power and money can't triumph over justice.
This is such a powerful statement. The fact that Jeffrey Epstein, despite his privilege, despite his position, despite his billions of dollars, is finally going to find himself in the scales of justice. It gives hope to everyone out there who is a victim, who has been hurt by crimes such as this, who has researched these terrible crimes all these years, who actually know just how deep and how far this cesspool spreads. There have been more victims that have come forth since Jeffrey Epstein's arrest. No doubt because they realize that the federal government and the DOJ will finally be doing something about this. That the state of New York and the state of Florida will finally be doing something about this. They are safe to come forward, they are safe to tell their stories, and they are safe to present their evidence. Like I said earlier regarding President Trump and his one-time visit to the island, fake news media is trying desperately to link President Trump to the offender, Jeffrey Epstein, when, of course, we know the opposite is true. Now, with the unsealing of these indictments and the discovery of these charges and exactly what it means for Jeffrey Epstein, and also the fact that the records were unsealed last week by the Second Circuit Court, it didn't take long for the liberal media to try to tie this scandal to President Trump. And Timothy O'Brien at Bloomberg wrote, Epstein arrest is a worry for Donald Trump, when the opposite couldn't be more true. The headline tried to tie Trump to Epstein because the offender was a member of the Mar-a-Lago club, and at the same time, O'Brien downplays Bill Clinton's 26 flights on Epstein's Lolita Express. It's not surprising, coming from the notoriously inaccurate fake news media. Now, Jim Hoft of the Gateway Pundit was the first to report on Sunday. An attorney who represented the victims of billionaire Jeffrey Epstein's assault said that in 2009, the only person that helped him was then citizen Donald Trump. Prosecuting attorney Bradley Edwards was interviewed in December 2018 in Palm Beach, Florida, shortly after settling a court case he had with billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. After the settlement was announced, attorney Edwards was interviewed outside the courthouse. He shared much about the case and then answered the interviewer's question about whether Donald Trump was somehow related to the case, since Epstein was reportedly a friend of Trump. We're going to read through the transcript, and I will leave a link to the video in the article section of the pinned comment below. So the reporter, Derek Brose, says, our current president has had relationships with Epstein in the past, and there are those, Katie Johnson and maybe other victims, who've accused Trump of being involved in things like this. In my experience, Trump supporters will not listen to anything along those lines. Obviously, we're not in the court of law here right now, but are those claims, although that case was dropped, it was dropped before it went to court, in your opinion as a lawyer, in your experience, is there anything you can say as to the validity of those claims and whether there will be anything more about that? Edwards replies definitively, nothing at all. The only thing I can say about President Trump is that he is the only person who in 2009, when I served a lot of subpoenas on a lot of people, or at least gave notice to some pretty connected people that I want to talk to them, is the only person who picked up the phone and said, let's just talk. I'll give you as much time as you want. I'll tell you what you need to know, and was very helpful in the information he gave, and gave no indication whatsoever that he was involved in anything untoward whatsoever, but had good information that checked out and that helped us, and we didn't have to take a deposition of him in 2009. Derek responds, do you have any information on James Patterson's claim that Trump had Epstein kicked out of Mar-a-Lago? Edwards says, I definitely have heard that. And I don't know if it was Trump himself as opposed to the manager. Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein. He helped prosecutors who represented victims of Epstein, and he reportedly kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were not friends. They were involved in the same circles. Donald Trump, however, is an honorable, truthful individual. Jeffrey Epstein and his ilk, the cesspool swamp, they are the ones that need to be worried. And that is exactly why the mainstream fake liberal media is trying to pin the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein onto Donald Trump. Because as we've seen with the Russia investigation, as we've seen with many things from the Democratic playbook, you accuse the other side of doing that which you are guilty. All right, now breaking exclusive here at Gateway Pundit from Judicial Watch. They've uncovered Clinton attorney Samuelson interview with the FBI, and it indicates that Hillary's emails were altered and there were other crimes. Hillary Clinton likely attempted to alter her emails in an effort to cover up illegal activities, rather than just deleting emails as was previously reported. Judicial Watch's efforts to obtain her attorney's interview with the FBI show this and other criminal actions. Judicial Watch again has performed a service to the country. In its efforts to get to the truth, Judicial Watch may have uncovered another shocking revelation in the Hillary Clinton email saga. In June of 2019, Judicial Watch posted the interview notes it received from the government between the FBI and Hillary Clinton's attorney, Heather Samuelson. Hidden in the deposition are bits of information that, when compared to information made public to date in the Hillary email case, make no sense at all. In the interview, Samuelson states to the FBI's Peter Strzok that she was assigned the duty of reviewing Hillary's emails, and in doing so, Samuelson reviewed the emails on her laptop both at the apartment of her and in Cheryl Mills' office. And here is some text directly from that interview. As is the case with the entire Hillary email cover-up, the Clintons and her team were above the law. Others have been thrown in jail for similar actions. For example, one NSA employee who brought hacking tools home was sentenced to 66 months in prison. Samuelson was assigned the task of obtaining Hillary's emails for her tenure as Obama's Secretary of State. After making a request for Hillary's emails from Platte River Networks, the firm that administered Hillary's personal email system, Samuelson reviewed them and noticed that some of Hillary's emails were missing. Samuelson stated that she believed that Hillary's emails that were missing were from the period of January 2009 through March 2009, and they must not have been backed up. But this makes no sense. Classification only works on classification-enabled systems. For example, in a typical agency, when a document is created, it is immediately stamped electronically, and visually there's a watermark or text stamp with the classification label. From that point forward, when the document is stored on a server, sent via email, or printed out, it will go through a number of security controls that will prevent certain operations on it. For example, if you are a user with lower-level security clearance, you won't be able to see the document name, its metadata, content, or be able to print it. In fact, the document won't even show up in any of the searches. This is where her story really begins to not make sense. There's no way that a backup would be deleted of anyone's emails in the government, especially those of someone at the level of the Secretary of State. The classified email systems used by the government are highly sophisticated. These classification systems are fully automated in order to remove the human factor or errors from the process. These systems also control the entire document lifecycle from its creation to its declassification and are tied to the organization's access control and audit systems. So you can see exactly who and when the document was viewed, even which pages were viewed, how long it was on the screen, etc. If there's no classification system in place, then all of the documents on the server can be considered breached. This is even without any proof of an external hacker accessing it. The reason for this is the exact scenario described by Samuelson, i.e., one in which an individual system, such as a system or personal attorney without the proper security clearance, would view and make electronic or physical copies of the document. Next, Samuelson makes another shocking remark. She states that after Clinton left the State Department, she started using another domain for her emails, at hrcoffice.com. But she states that no old emails were transferred from the clintonemail.com domain to the new email. She also stated that she didn't know how Clinton or her close assistant, Huma Abedin, obtained her old emails once the new domain was established. At this point, it's important to note that most people view the whole Clinton email server saga as an honest mistake that was going to be remedied somewhere down the road by putting the proper security controls in place. This is certainly how Hillary, her staff, and the media justified it. But this is not the case. The whole purpose of a standalone email server from the get-go was for Hillary to circumvent government email system security controls. Hillary's emails contain classified material because former FBI Director James Comey told us this in his infamous press conference 3 years ago, nearly to the day. But Samuelson stated that she didn't believe that Hillary's emails were classified because they did not have classification markings on them. And here is where Samuelson lays an egg. Samuelson noticed during her review that Hillary's emails were displayed as hrod17 at clintonemail.com. But this email address was not even created until after Hillary was Secretary of State. You can't send emails from an account that is not created or in place. The only reasonable explanations for the receipt of emails from a domain that was not yet in place is 1. The source name in the emails has been doctored and updated to an email account not yet in place, or 2, a utility was used to copy the emails in bulk from one account to another and in the process change some of the fields including the original email source. Why would Hillary do this? The only explanation that makes sense is that the Hillary team was trying to eliminate or strip out all the classified markings in her emails, and in the process, they stripped out the old email addresses. And since that account didn't exist anymore, their process added the new address. To put it plainly, Hillary attempted to doctor, i.e. change, her emails for some reason, and in doing so, she inadvertently changed her email address. Clearly, if Hillary was caught editing her emails by the FBI, then former FBI Director James Comey knew very well that Hillary intended to break the law. 3 years ago, Jim Comey lied to America. Yet again, more bombshell information coming out from Judicial Watch, more damning evidence of the fact that Hillary Clinton was involved in illegal activities, at least so far as it pertains to her emails and the private servers that she maintained, trying to get around the security systems in place set up by the U.S. government to make it not possible for her to transfer classified information outside of that system. She did everything she could to get around that, and in the process, her classified emails were breached. All right, and finally, this is an Instagram post that was sent over by my friend Patriot Politics Research on Twitter, and it shows Tucker Carlson visiting the demilitarized zone around the time of the Trump-Kim meeting. Now, you can see here is a tower, a watchtower, with some military guys up top. We're going to go take a closer look at that tower here. Now you get a little bit closer, and perhaps you can see what it is that we see. Right here in the center, on the top of that tower, is a large Q. Get a little bit closer, and it's even clearer. This was put here on purpose. I'm sure that these people, Q team, our favorite Anon, the president, they knew that this would be featured prominently in the background of Tucker's segment, and they did it so that we could see exactly what was going on. I think that's all I have for you today, and I want to thank everyone for joining me. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.